Welcome to the solar news today, Saturday, June 13th, 2026. And yes, it's still the same. NASA messed up again. We're still at a KP3. So far, the solar storm hasn't happened. We have slightly elevated wind speeds, over 500 kilometers per second, and weak irradiance. Solar activity has decreased. Today, we're only seeing smaller flares, which occurred in the B class range, the upper B class, and the lower C class, with a 95% chance of C flares, 35% chance of M flares, and 5% chance of X flares. There are still some regions that could bring surprises. For example, AR4465. There we have a nice dark core. Something could happen there. We also have more plugs forming here. So these are regions with the potential to develop sunspots, but they don't have any yet. And here we have a very active 4464. A larger event could also become relevant to Earth here. However, the KP5 or 6 storm that was forecast yesterday did not occur. So here we only reach peaks of KP3, which is still within the normal range for solar wind. Due to the declining activity, a multitude of coronal holes are now forming on the sun because of the complex magnetic entanglements. Here we have one that's in Earth strike zone, but it's much too small. CH2 is also an Earth strike zone. Something could come from that, but it's also very, very small, though it could still grow. But we can see here the many coronal holes, which show us that there are currently very complex magnetic conditions on the sun. These occur when two free magnetic field regions with the same poles face each other. And there are several of these here, which is one of the reasons why coronal holes form, as a result of a decline in activity from the sunspots. Even when the sun looks calm, there's always something happening on it. Here we see, which is a bit unusual, no activity from the sunspots, but we do have very strong activity from filament eruptions, as we can see right now on the eastern edge. And one has just erupted here, which is relevant for Earth. That happened in this area here. There, a filament erupted, and this filament sent out a CME. You can see it even more clearly here. Now, on the eastern edge, a CME, a major one, has gone off. But the activity itself came from this area here. That was another one just now. Exactly. That was the prominence that just erupted. The CME itself from the filament came a bit later. So here we have it. You can clearly see what a flare is going off there. It's actually pretty far to the east, but still, the calculations for this CME that went off are already finished. And you can already see here that there was quite a strong CME that resulted from this filament eruption. And now let's take a look at where it went, because it's now in a region where it's already in the Earth strike zone. So it's quite possible that the CME could also head toward Earth. Yes, NASA has already published theirs, and you can very clearly see that we're getting a pretty direct hit here, coming straight toward Earth. And here we can see in the impact window that if the calculations are correct, we could be looking at a KP7 storm, partly due to our weak magnetic field. The Van Allen belt, or our ring current system, still has pretty significant leaks, especially here in the proton layers. There are more severe outages there. Today, once again, there's a compression down in the electron layers. They've compressed a bit upward. Of course, we also have persistent dropouts, which had a longer pause here. But still, the ring current system is anything but a reliable buffer. Again and again, high-energy particles from the ring current system make their way into our ionosphere and further into our atmosphere. So let's take a look at the magnetosphere, which is very turbulent. The head has slipped too far south here. The polar holes are opening up, and energy is entering the polar regions. The head itself is at about 5 to 6 Earth radii and is pressing into the Van Allen belt. It is very unstable. The magnetic field lines, the terrestrial green ones, can't close over the head, They're constantly being blocked by interplanetary field lines. This leads to compressions in the terrestrial field lines and to the formation of closed field lines in the tail, which repeatedly causes stronger magneton explosions. And there is a very strong destabilization of the dipole, which is anything but reliable and can no longer manage to close over the head as it used to. As mentioned, the head is much too small, about half its original size, where it then collapses permanently. And of course, that means reduced protection. The reactions of high energy particles are happening much too deep in the atmosphere. The forecast for today. Today, a KP was supposed to come, but it didn't happen. Yesterday's forecasts were wrong again. Tomorrow, then, a KP, and for June, when the new CME is actually predicted for the 15th KP. So the values are most likely not accurate, but at least there's a trend. And with that, I'll say goodbye for today and wish you all harmonious movements. Alla gente.